Hi, my name is Saz Ross, and I am honored to be a part of the Empowering Women in Industry virtual conference. In my speech, I'm going to unpack some of the ways that we can be successful as female professionals. And I want to make sure that you get some amazing resources out of this presentation today and find a way to create, unify, and enhance your skill set. So let's dive in. I'm going to screen share and we will start the presentation. So the first thing that you may be looking at right now are the big words get lost. Usually when we think of get lost, we think someone's trying to tell us to leave immediately. Please go away. But today we're going to redefine that expression, and we are going to get lost in creativity, and we are going to learn how to navigate through all the different types of ways that we can do something more creative with our engagement, how we can really capture someone's attention by using a creative skill set. And we're also going to be telling a story along the way, my story. And hopefully some of the elements of my story can help you in yours. And before I dive in, I want to take a moment of appreciation for not only anyone listening to this presentation, but I also want you to think about all of the people in your life that you are appreciative of. I want you to turn to the person that is in the closest room that you're in right now, and I want you to tell them something that you appreciate. It could be a significant other. You can be telling them, hey, thanks for washing the dishes. You know how much I don't like doing that, right? Or you could even thank your dog for being a source of support in your life. Really anything that comes to mind, think of it. Ready, set, go. As you're talking out loud or maybe shouting to your husband who is in the floor below the one you're on right now, I want you to think about that word appreciation. Appreciation is such a heavy word. It is way more significant than a thank you. And it's one of those words that leaves a lasting impression. Sometimes we forget how much that word appreciation matters, but if you think about it, it's a word that hasn't been abbreviated yet. Usually when you hear thank you, or you even see or read the word thank you, you see the abbreviation, THX, in a text. Not once have I ever seen the word appreciation abbreviated. Not once have I ever heard much appreciate. I appreciate you taking out the trash. Not once. And I think there's a reason for it. Honestly, if you think about it, when you tell someone you appreciate what they do, it's not just saying thank you. It's telling that person that you are genuine about the things that they do for you. You are sincerely blessed to have them, or whoever you're talking about in your life, because of something that they did to impact your life in a positive way. Sometimes we don't feel appreciated in what we do, and people don't verbalize that as much as they should. Maybe a boss, maybe you as a young professional starting out, not acknowledging the fact that you didn't get to that place on your own. In fact, Global Newswire, one of the world's largest news sharing distribution networks, states that a third of the working population will leave their job in a 5-year turnover due to the fact that they feel underappreciated. So we cannot underestimate the power of that word. And if we don't use it enough, sometimes we may feel lost. Now, this is a feeling that we can have in our careers if we feel like we're not making an impact. So, if anything, I want you to think about maybe a time in your life where you could have used some appreciation to not feel lost. I want you to take a journey right now and transport yourself to a place in time where you felt so utterly lost. Where were you? What did you see? What did you feel? What did you hear? What did you say? And as you are moving back in time and transporting yourself to this moment of feeling lost, I want you all to think about that story. Is it a sad story? Is it uplifting? I bet for most of you, in that moment of feeling lost, you felt sad. I don't blame you. Our dictionaries tell us that it isn't a good feeling to be lost, nor is it to be desired. According to Merriam-Webster, it means to be ruined or destroyed physically or morally, hopelessly unattainable, lacking assurance or self-confidence, not appreciated or understood, taken away or beyond reach or attainment. Thank you, Miriam, for these lovely, wonderful, negative definitions of the word lost. Not in any place I could find on the internet, in a book, did I see lost as a good thing. So today, our goal is to build resilience by redefining the word lost. And when you look at this picture, I want you to think about that girl in the woods. I want you to look at that girl and see her as you. And I want you to think about her in that moment of being lost in the woods. Does she look sad or mad? You can't really see, but you wonder, what is she feeling in that moment? And maybe you can see that even though she might not know where she's going, her curiosity is bringing her to places that she never expected. And sometimes if we get lost, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have lost all direction, but maybe it means that we are taken to a place that is out of our comfort zone, that pushes us towards a place of growth. So in that mindset, I've created the Get Lost Outlook, where we redefine the expression lost and the process of getting lost. Because sometimes it is that place of unknowing or not knowing where we're going in order to get us to the place where we need to be, especially to make that impact. So let's dive into the word lost. I've used it as an acronym in every keynote that I've done, and I've dissected each letter to mean something completely different. Listen to criticism, own your outlet, storytell, take creative risks. All of these action statements have helped tremendously in my life. And hopefully you can use these words and action statements to actually transform the way that you approach engaging an audience and making that impact that you've been looking for. So let's unpack the first action statement. Listen to criticism. How do you feel when someone says, listen to criticism? The last thing that you want to do at any point in your life is to listen, especially if it seems like it's an attack, right? Someone telling you what to do. So this calls for knowing how to give effective criticism and how to listen to effective criticism. And that has a lot to do with tone. That has a lot to do with how someone is maybe highlighting some of the positives of what you're doing and then getting to the parts where maybe you can improve. But really think about a time in your life where maybe you were unable to open yourself up to criticism. This is exactly where the beginning of my story starts, right here, with this girl. This is me. And no, I'm not a rare species of raccoon, or a panda, but I am 16. And at this point, all I'm thinking about is doodling on my homework, the walls of my bedroom, my pants. That was actually my nickname in high school. It was pants because I would draw on them and let other people draw on them. Eventually, I wanted to be called Saz instead of Sarah because I felt like I had more of an identity. But needless to say, I was lost. And I never wanted to listen to anybody. I would rather fail 1,000 times before thinking, okay, maybe I need to try this differently or take someone else's opinion. At this moment in time, I would have preferred to fall in a ditch. I would have preferred to not know how to climb out, have a dinosaur or a pterodactyl eat me alive, escape, and then have a bear come along and eat my only sandwich in order to feel like I could listen to anybody. Because once you eat the sandwich, that is the final straw. And at a moment in my life, I felt like I needed somebody to tell me what to do. But the only way I would change is if the bear ate my sandwich. That would be the last trigger to get me to do something. So ultimately, I had to fail. I had to be in the cone of shame to get to a place where I was able to listen. And that place was on my forensics team, which was a speech and debate team in high school. I was on the speech and debate team with my sister as the captain, which was terrible. Terrible, because in any situation where you have a sibling, you're constantly comparing yourself to that sibling. And she happened to be like a national award-winning speaker in high school, of all places and times. So I remember having my first tournament. I memorized a speech, and then I had to go into a room of strangers in front of judges and contestants and perform that speech. Well, I remember getting up there, the first round, ready to speak. I didn't know one word of that speech. I perfectly said the title and I perfectly said the author, and then my mind went blank. I really couldn't think of anything else to say. And in that moment in time, that's when I felt like I reached rock bottom. That's when the bear ate my sandwich. And that's when I realized I needed to do this differently. And I needed to take a new approach, which meant putting my pride in a time out. And knowing that as many times as I practiced, it didn't make perfect. It made permanent. If you do something again and again and again, it doesn't make you better at it. Only when you open yourself to listening to others do you actually see an effective change. And if you act on those words, it's really not enough to listen, but you really have to put them into play. You have to take the different approach, and you have to do something that feels uncomfortable. And as a result of that, I won so many tournaments. I was able to get number one in all of these amazing places at Harvard and Princeton, and in a nationally ranked tournament at my high school. It was so incredible to see those results. Ultimately, I still felt like after that point in high school, I was still that girl on a road to maybe somewhere I didn't know where it ended up, or I didn't know the final destination. But I was still traveling along this road, and I was fairly confident that I was going to go places. But then college settled in. I was an undecided major working 3 jobs, and I was lost once more. I was forced to choose something, and I didn't want to choose. I was forced to choose between something in the sciences and music and art, and I didn't want to choose between all of these things that I cared about. I wanted to do something that felt right for me. I wanted to find a place where I had purpose. And in that moment, I didn't know where that place was. So I actually turned to something that helped me. Remember, I told you I was called Pants in high school and I would doodle on everything? Well, this is where I discovered the next part of Lost, which was owning my outlet, which meant going back to a place where I felt brave enough to succeed. And that was through art making. All of these pictures in front of you are pieces that I made in college at times in my life where I felt like I had no direction. And all of the subjects were so different. It ranged from people, it ranged from different types of mediums, animals, just random doodles. In all of these things, I was able to actually find a group and community by making art and join a craft club filled with art education majors. And if I didn't turn to my outlet, I would have never met those art education majors, and I would have never landed on art education as what I wanted to do. So I approached this major with an open mind. I started printmaking every chance I could get, pouring ink onto glass, watching that ink move and pouring denatured alcohol and mineral spirits and water, creating weird textures on plexiglass. And in this place and time, I felt like a master. I felt like the queen of what I was doing, and I was able to take control over my life. I knew this place in college was probably my epiphany moment, the place where I knew I felt like I belonged. But that all came crashing down when I got a call from my aunt about my mom. My mom was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a vigorous blood cancer. And when my aunt gave me that call, because my mom was too ashamed to tell me herself, I knew in that moment that life would be different. I was constantly traveling from Maryland to New York, where my family was, to take care of my mom. And in the process of doing that, I was bursting, crumbling at the seams, bursting with emotion, and trying to find ways to cope with that. And I knew the one thing that my mom would want out of all of this is for me to just try my best to push forward. So I did. I wound up winning Maryland Art Education Association Art Teacher of the Year in 2016 for my county in elementary art. And I felt incredible. But knowing I was in education, there was still something missing from this award. I was able to get an award being an art teacher, but it actually made me rethink about myself as an artist. How could I be a great art teacher if all I did was pour work into making myself a good educator and not an amazing artist? So this forced me to relook at what I was doing and really examine how I could make myself better, how I could push myself to be the best version of myself. And I was able to do that through the art of storytelling. Now, I know a lot of speakers and coaches talk about storytelling. We're all storytellers at the end of the day. It's just sometimes maybe you want to choose what story you tell, or you need to know what story will be the most effective for your audience. And how can you deliver that message effectively? That story. How can you keep people on the edge of their seats? What are you going to do to make a difference with your story? Well, something that you should know. According to the American Journal of Public Health, having a creative outlet or even observing someone with a creative outlet can actually decrease psychological stress, renew brain function, improve your mood, cultivate your social life, and even make yourself a little more interesting and memorable to your audience. So think about when you tell a story, you're sharing a part of yourself, you're being vulnerable with your audience, and you're letting them know the way that you felt through the five senses: seeing, touching, smelling, tasting, hearing. You are transporting your audience every time you tell a story with the five senses. You're telling them the details. Like every time I picked up a pen in my art class, I felt powerful. I could smell the ink and know that I was in a safe environment and that I could do anything with that pen in my hand. Storytelling is so essential when you discuss some of the ways that the senses impacted you. How something felt, how something smelt, right? It's not enough just to think about the senses, though. It's really more or less what words you're emphasizing, where you're pausing, where are you making the most dramatic impact. And I remember I would use storytelling every time I stepped into my classroom. I would do this lesson on Frida Kahlo, and every time I would talk about Frida, instead of saying, "Hey everyone, today we're going to learn about a portrait painter from Mexico. Her name is Frida Kahlo." Forget that. I would walk into that room, act like I was stepping on a stage, and I would say, "Today, we are going to transport ourselves to Mexico. We are going to immerse ourselves in the culture of Mexican art. And we are going to discuss one of the most famous portrait painters of all time. Her name is Frida Kahlo." And just like that, I had them on the edge of their seats. Every student would put down whatever fidget spinner, would stop talking to their neighbor, because they would be so immersed in my ability to storytell. And this really made a difference. I was able to storytell. I had parents calling me, emailing me, wanting me to teach camps, I had all these opportunities knocking on my door because I could make kids listen. I was interviewed by local news station for artwork that I did in my class, and I was able to actually make some art of my own, feeling this new sense of confidence in storytelling with selling my art for the first time at a venue in Philadelphia. This was the most amazing feeling. I knew that I was living my dream by being an educator that was effective in the use of storytelling. And I was also doing that in my art, with drawing weird creatures and different places and these natural environments that were born out of my imagination. I was able to storytell and ignite conversations with strangers about it. And it felt so good. But this high came with a tremendous low. And ultimately, at that moment in time, it was through that low where I had to take a creative risk. And in that creative risk, I was able to actually approach other people and talk more about what I did in art and get partnerships with businesses. I was able to talk to the local bookstore and ask, "Hey, do you need bookmarks?" And I was able to post pictures of my art online and have people ask me, "Hey, can you make wedding invitations?" And instead of doubting myself and saying I wasn't good enough, I was able to say yes. And I was able to tell them, you know what? I think I can do this. I was able to search for that confidence within to find the places where I knew my work would shine. But ultimately, and I'm going to stop sharing and talk to you personally about this, in the midst of all of these amazing partnerships and opportunities to collaborate with other people, my mom was getting sicker. And I got another call from my aunt around the time I was putting my work in stores, saying my mom had about a year left to live. Not even. So I said to myself that I would leave education, that I would leave the safe walls of my art room and find a way to help in New York and take care of her. Well, ultimately, when I got there, little did I know she would have a week left to live. I watched my mom pass away right in front of me. And it was the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. Part of me wishes that she passed in her sleep because I wouldn't be able to see it. Because it was the last image I had of her in her bed, in her house. And if anything, in that moment in time, I was different. And I knew I would be different forever. I quit my job and I told myself that I would do better things than just education. I was going to use my art to change the world. So I ventured out, and it was a difficult decision to make because I had a safe, secure job. I had a pension. I had all of the things that I was built. I had tenure at my county that I taught it in Maryland. I had the security that a lot of people really wanted. And ultimately, I gave it all up because I was lost. And in the process of giving that up, I worked at a school in Baltimore City that I loved. But ultimately, I moved several steps backward because I was paid a lot less and my job was a lot harder. I had minimal materials. I didn't really have a lot of support as far as, different behaviors and learning disabilities in my class. And I had a lot to put up with. My room actually overheated and most of my crayons melted. And if anything, I was at the end of my rope trying to find ways to, get that room to cool down. I was looking on Facebook Marketplace for air conditioners. And in the process of doing that, I was so desperate, so depressed, and so lost that I actually went to a neighborhood that I really shouldn't have gone to. And this was to pick up an air conditioner. And when I was trying to pick it up, I had a gun pointed to my head. And in that moment, I realized I didn't care. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about my well-being. I knew I shouldn't have gotten out of my car, but I did. This was my all-time low. And luckily in that moment, that person who picked up that gun, put it down, realized I had nothing on me, and just wanted to get the air conditioner. And by the grace of God, possibly my mom, I was let go. I don't know why. I'll never know why to this day. But I was given a new chance to live this life. And I wasn't going to disappoint my mom. So ultimately, what I decided to do was look for positions within my organization that would take me a step higher. And I saw that there was a vacancy at this position in my organization. And this leadership position was incredible. Basically was a director of education spot, educational associate liaison, where you actually were helping instructors and designing instructional content and helping art teachers be art teachers. This was something I was so passionate about. I mustered up the confidence to actually approach the executive director of this organization and say, hey, I want this position. So she let me come in for an interview and I landed that position. And at that point, everything changed. I was able to talk to organizations. I was able to make an impact in lives, and I was able to make more art. I had flexible hours, and I was able to actually help people face to face, virtually. And in the process of doing that, I made some incredible works of art. And I'm going to share my screen so you can dive in to see what happened. As I'm thinking about the artwork, I want you to see a picture of my mom. And before I show you what I've done, I just wanted to share with you her home and the fact that this woman changed my life. And if anything, that house that you see in front of you inspired the artworks that I'm about to share with you. Even though you can't see it, there is a train track that is running through the backyard of that house. And it would shake my house. I would actually remember as a kid coming home from school and I would see all of the dolls on my shelf on the floor of my bedroom because the shelf would be shaking all day long. So this occurred to me that I could embrace this crazy childhood experience and use this as fuel for my work. But only in that moment, as I started doing a little bit of digging into my work, did I discover something that would change my life forever. And it was this letter right here from my mom. Hope all is well. Miss you so much. Make every day a new day. My love is with you always. Make every day a new day. At a moment where I had severe depression, lost the most important person in my life, and was in a life-threatening situation, reading this letter gave me the courage, the strength, the resilience to push through everything I was going through, and knew that I had someone that I needed to make, proud. I needed her to be proud of me. I needed her to know that this was something that I was going to embark on, an artistic journey and change lives, all within a year of quitting my job. And let me show you what happened. I was able to create all of these artworks with houses, using pen and ink, the materials I loved the most. And I was able to transform that house that you saw into all of these little quirky houses as a picture of how I felt. And if you can see in a lot of these pictures, I'm going to hover over this little girl. She's hidden in the imagery. She's hanging on by a thread. But yet you still see her in each picture. Some you don't, but many you do. And I always think of her being me. No matter where I go, no matter what situation I wind up in, I'm still able to get to the next picture. I'm a part of the next illustration. And sometimes you'll even see the little house hanging above or below or between a subject. And not only does this make people more mindful of the fact that, yes, a lot of these structures are also juxtaposed with environmental elements and creatures to be mindful of space, but that house is also symbolic of something rooted deep within me that will forever and always impact my life, which was my home. That is a constant in my life. And every time I look at that house, I think of my mom. And I know that I'm doing something that's not only making myself proud, but making her proud. So I continued on with this journey. Not only did I approach businesses, but I was able to post enough work on social media and approach enough people in person where people were actually coming to me. I was designing album art for bands. I was designing business logos, taking on big scale commissions. And it occurred to me in that moment when I started making art and I started to infuse that into professional development and different workshops and conferences. This is the research that I did to find out how I was making that impact that I wanted. I wanted to feel, and I wanted people to see and know for themselves. I was able to look up some ancient philosophy from Aristotle and read 10% of what people remember is what they read, 20% is what they hear, 30 is what they see, 50 is what they see and hear, 70% is what they say and write, and 90% is what people do. What they do will make the impact. That action someone makes will create change. And ultimately, in the process of art making and in the process of storytelling and letting people in on a journey, on a place in your mind, in a story, having them get lost, and in the process of that, make something. Let them do something. Make something physical to show and share and talk about, and maybe even reveal a little bit of their story along the way. That is where you see the impact. By giving someone else a platform for creativity, you are unlocking a part of the mind that will be creating the most memorable experiences that anyone can offer. And at the end of it, here was my finding. 100% of the people in my workshops, amongst all of the reviews, said that they remembered that workshop because of how it made them feel. You will never, ever find a person that you impact the life of because of your story and have them say that they forgot it. Because if it's a good enough story, they'll remember it. You truly impacted that life, that story is with them for the rest of time. That's how you know you made the impact. You made them feel a certain way. Same thing with art. You can evoke some sort of emotion out of it. It was worth it. You made someone think. You started a discussion. Ultimately, by giving someone else that platform, I was able to transform lives, not only in person, but during quarantine. I started various groups online making art. I started doing webinars for businesses, school systems, ministries, universities. And I had all of my workshop participants post their work. And they were able to tell me how they felt about making it. And they would repost the work they made in my workshop. And another person would contact me and say, hey, I saw a friend of mine make this. Can you do this for my community? And it snowballed into something that I never expected. By word of mouth, by sharing the story, I was able to see my business completely transform and move to places I never thought it could go. I was doing watercolor classes. I was creating creative affirmations, building cards, showing people different ways that they can create inspiring messages on scraps of paper. And I was doing this all from the comfort of my own home. I was creating impact through a screen. And just because I couldn't sell my art at markets, that didn't stop me from making a difference. That didn't stop me from creating change. At the end of the day, you have the power to make the difference. You need to know that getting lost is a part of that process. And not knowing the final destination doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never get there. But maybe it'll just reroute you to a place that you were meant to be. So think about these questions. What is your creative outlet? Do you bake? Do you garden? Do you draw? Do you dance? How can you use that in your professional life to make yourself engaging, to share a part of your life, make yourself seem more interesting to your audience? And how can you storytell, use your voice to make your words and your presentation skills more engaging? Maybe it's about how you pause, or your tone of voice, or maybe how you're utilizing the 5 senses. How are you using all of those tools to create a memorable performance? I love this quote by Shakespeare. It's all the world's a stage and the men and women merely players. How are you making a stage in every room or space that you enter? How are you making people listen? And most of all, as women, we need to know how to lean on each other and who we should reach out to. I want you to take a piece of paper right now and I want you to write down a role model that you have. Who is that person? Who is that idol? What do they do that makes you inspired? And how can you reach them? Through an email, a call, through social media? How can you get in touch with that person? Maybe ask them a question, pick their brain. I've done that so many times where I've reached out to a hero of mine, and sometimes I hear nothing. But then other times, I get a conversation that I could not believe even existed. And it was because I had the courage to reach out to them. I had the courage to take a creative risk, right? I had a risk that I was able to take, but I put a creative twist on it by allowing myself to do something a little different than I normally do. That's what's creative about it. I was able to actually approach a conversation without making it seem like I was going to interrogate someone. I actually picked a part of something they did. I remember specifically a hero of mine that I reached out to. I believe one of them, I think Cassie Stevens. And I was able to tell her how much she inspired me. And we had a beautiful, tiny little conversation, and I'll remember that for the rest of my life. And it was because of the fact that I found something specific, something about her creativity that I was inspired by, and I was able to share that with her, this famous art educator. So now that you've thought about your role model, your voice, your creative voice, and how you're going to engage using your outlet, how are you going to use all of those things to make an impact? How are you going to change lives? By reaching other people, creating a sense of unity in your space, by inviting other people into your community. And maybe along the way, even if you're not expecting it, you may feel like you're moving in a direction that is taking you to the unknown. But I want to tell you that it's okay if you get lost. I want to thank everybody for listening to my presentation. And before I let you go, I want to share with you something I've been able to do during everyone's time apart in quarantine. I want you guys to be able to actually get something out of this presentation today that you can utilize in your own life. And one of those things today I'm going to share with you is my community on Facebook I created called Lost in Creation. This group is specifically for people who share their creative outlets. We post, promote, and follow each other on social media, and we create this environment that is open and safe for people who want to express themselves. And if you decide to join this community, that's awesome. But the main reason I'm telling you about this is because I want you to think about a community that you can start with your audience. I want you to think about a group that you can impact. And hopefully, you can create an amazing difference in the lives of others. You can enhance your professional skill set by reaching more people than you ever thought you could. And even if you think something might be a little bit, questionable, what is the harm in starting a group to see if people like a certain idea that you have? It's like throwing a dart at the dartboard. Why not just see how much people want out of that group, how much they want to engage, right? It doesn't matter what that is. Little animals wearing hats, whatever it may be. Start a group and see if people like it. And it may turn into something you never expected. I just started this group, and I've already been able to cultivate this amazing community out of nothing. And I'm doing it with friends of mine, and we all enjoy it. So I do encourage you to start a community online. It doesn't have to be through Facebook, but it can be through a platform that you feel comfortable with. And I asked you all of these questions today. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with is this voucher. At all of my presentations, I always leave a voucher, or I have my art for sale, and a lot of the pictures that you saw, I actually have in a gallery right now. But for all of my prints, I want to leave you with 20% off anything from my factory. My website's at the bottom. You get this awesome discount code if you want to screenshot this, and a 30-minute coach session for free. So feel free to reach out to me, to email me, and you can reach me through any of these platforms. And my email is attached to my Instagram, which is my IG. And you can DM me, message me, ask me a question, and feel free to share a part of your life with me that you think might help you in healing, building resilience, moving forward. Because I've been through the hurt, and I've been through the loss, and I've been in a place where I've had zero direction. But ultimately, being lost is what made me stronger. And it's what made the ultimate difference in my life. And I hope that for all of you, if you're feeling that way right now, I want you to know it's okay. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And if anything, we are in this all together. And I want to thank each and every listener who stuck it out through this presentation. And I want to thank every single person who stayed, because I want you to know that this moment right now is everything. Being able to open yourself up to listen to other voices and people, that is something that we need to do right now. And I'm happy you were able to do it with me. Thank you. And get lost.